There's a moment after you set a boundary where the reaction surprises you. It's not anger or shouting or someone storming out. It's something much quieter. A pause, a slight tightening in the room, a tone shift you can feel in your chest before you can name it. You didn't insult anyone. You didn't attack anyone either. And you didn't make a speech. You simply didn't give access. And for a lot of men, that moment is where the real work begins. Because the first instinct is to repair the discomfort instead of holding the line. Most men were trained to believe boundaries are about conflict. But most boundaries don't actually meet you in a fight. They meet you in a quiet room. They meet you in an ordinary space with people you know. When someone is asking for something, you feel the old pattern move through your body where you agree and adapt and accommodate this person, this request. But this time you don't. You say, I can't, or no. Or you simply move in the opposite direction and the air changes, not because you did something wrong, but because the system you were in depended on you being available. This is what men don't expect. Sometimes the strongest reaction to a boundary is not rage. It's subtle disappointment, distance, and pressure. It looks like this. You say no to a request you would have said yes to last year. The other person doesn't argue. They smile. They say, no worries. And then a minute later, are you okay? Not as care, but as a probe. Because in a lot of dynamics, your compliance has been the evidence that everything is fine. When you stop complying, the other person has to decide what the new meaning is. So naturally they test. Not necessarily consciously, but instinctively. They look for an explanation. Why has this changed? They look for a crack. They look for a reason to keep the old access. And you feel it in your body. The impulse to reassure them. You want to say, no, it's not you. I'm just tired. I'm fine. It's fine. I'll do it another time. Because you can feel their discomfort. And you want to relieve it. This is where most men lose their boundary. Not because they believe the boundary is wrong. Rather, because they believe other people's discomfort is their own responsibility. This is the inner equation that collapses men. If someone feels bad, I did something bad. It's not logic. It's conditioning. A lot of men learned early. Keep things smooth. Keep people happy. Keep the peace. So when you set a boundary and that atmosphere tightens, your nervous system reads it as danger, as something you've done wrong. And the easiest way to remove that danger is to soften and explain. You start giving a speech. You say, look, it's just that I've got a lot going on today. I really want to help. I just can't right now. I hate to do this. I feel so bad. And the boundary turns into a negotiation. You didn't mean to negotiate, but the moment you start proving your boundary is reasonable, all you're doing is teaching the other person that your boundary, your sacred spine, must be approved by them. And approval is a door. This is the doorway into how men burn out without understanding why. They think they're tired because life is, well, demanding. Work, responsibilities, family, stress. But often, the exhaustion comes from one place. You are running two lives at once. The life you are living and the life you are managing. Managing expectations. Managing reactions. Managing impressions. Managing the emotional temperament in every room you enter. That is not kindness. That is self-erasure, self-betrayal. And you can hide it for years because it looks like maturity. You look patient. You look reliable. You look mature. You look like the strong one, the socially adapted one. But privately, you become resentful. You say yes, and you hate yourself for it later. You stay available, and you feel drained afterwards. You answer messages you don't want to answer. You make space you don't have. And then you tell yourself, I shouldn't feel this way. They need me. That sentence is the trap. Here's another moment. You hold a boundary cleanly. No speech, no apology, and the response comes later, like a delayed wave. They say, I just didn't expect that from you. I thought you were different. You used to be more flexible. This is not feedback. It's leverage. It's an attempt to return you to the role they preferred. And you can feel the fork in the road in your own body. One way is explaining, softening, reopening the door, and the other way is stay still and let the discomfort be theirs. And most men choose option one because it feels humane and safe. And here's the truth. Reopening the door isn't always compassion. Sometimes it's fear. Fear of being disliked. Fear of being misunderstood. Fear of losing connection. So you trade your boundary for belonging. And you call that peace. But peace bought with self-betrayal is not peace. It's quiet collapse. So when we say weak men hate boundaries, we need to be precise. This isn't about calling people evil. And this certainly isn't about superiority. Weakness here means no internal structure. A man without internal structure relies on external access. Access to your time, access to your energy, access to your emotional labor, access to your availability. He may not know he's doing it. It may be oblivious to him. He may even be a good person, but his system is built on extracting. So when you set a boundary, he doesn't feel limited. He feels threatened because your boundary forces him back into himself. And if he hasn't built himself, that return feels like being abandoned. This is why boundaries provoke such strange reactions. They expose codependency. They expose entitlement. They expose emotional hunger that was being fed quietly for years. A lot of men expect manipulation to be obvious. They're looking for the evil villain, Dr. Evil. But most unhealthy dynamics aren't run by villains. They're run by people trying to keep what works for them. So instead of shouting, they withdraw. Instead of arguing, they guilt trip. Instead of confronting, they punish with distance. And because it's subtle, you doubt yourself. You think, maybe I am imagining it. Maybe I'm being too sensitive. Maybe I should just smooth this over. This is why boundaries are such a powerful test. They reveal whether your center is internal and regulated or external and negotiated. Let's make it even more real. Your phone buzzes. A message arrives that you don't want to answer right now. Not because you hate them, because you're tired, because you're trying to stay present with your own life and system, because you're learning not to live in other people's urgency. You put your phone down and immediately your body tenses up. You start thinking, they'll think I'm rude. They'll think I'm ignoring them. I should just reply quickly so it's done. So you reach for the phone and reply. But that's not connection. That is compulsion. And if you're honest, you can trace that back. You have trained yourself that other people's comfort is more important than your own timing and regulation. A boundary here is simple. You answer when you are ready, but holding that boundary produces discomfort. And that discomfort is the price of sovereignty. Men often fear boundaries because they confuse boundaries with cruelty. They think if they stop giving access, they are being harsh. If they stop explaining, they are being arrogant. If they stop accommodating, they are becoming selfish and distant. But there's a difference between being cold and being clear. Coldness is withdrawal as punishment. Clarity, on the other hand, is refusal without aggression. A clean boundary is not an attack. It's a truthful limit. And the more calmly you hold that truthful limit, the more it reveals. Because you remove the drama people can latch onto. When you're calm, they can't blame your emotion. They have to face the boundary itself. Strong men with internal structure, do something simple. They don't negotiate their limits through emotion. They can hear disappointment without completely collapsing. They can be misunderstood without panicking. They can be disliked without rearranging themselves. Not because they're numb, cold, or distant, because they know who they are. When you set a boundary and a strong man hears it, he adjusts himself. He might not like it, but he respects it because he is not surviving through access to you, through that external access. He can stand on his own spine. Boundaries don't destroy strong relationships. They actually protect them. They remove resentment before it calcifies. They remove hidden contracts before they poison and erode trust. This phase requires a brutal simplicity. When you set a boundary, set it at once, cleanly, then just stop talking without justification, without the long story, without the performance of being the good guy. You can still be kind. You can still be respectful. But you don't have to sell your boundary, because selling means you believe it needs approval, the external validation. And this is where men start to feel their real power, when they can hold a limit without needing the world to agree. Let's be honest about the cost. Boundaries will cost you some comfort. They will cost you some approval. They will cost you some access to people who only liked you when you were easy to use. Some people will drift. Some will punish. Some will call you intense. That's the cost. But the reward is not applause. It's internal, quiet, structural. You stop resenting your own choices. You stop carrying emotional weight that is not yours. You stop living as a resource for other people to extract. And slowly, and again, this takes time, the right people begin to meet you differently. Not because you demanded respect or put on a show, because you stopped being available to entitlement. A lot of men learn this lesson at work. A message comes in marked urgent. A colleague says, "I need this now." A manager calls late and expects you to jump. And you can feel the old reflex popping up. Drop what you're doing. Prove that you are dependable. Buy safety with compliance. So you cancel your own plan. You stay late. You answer at midnight. You tell yourself, this is just what men do. But you know what happens when you live that way. You become the man everyone can reach at any time. And when everyone can reach you at any time, you stop belonging to your own life. A boundary here is not a speech about work-life balance. It's a simple, doable practice. You don't respond to urgency that isn't real. You ask one calm question when this arises. By when exactly? Or what happens if this waits until tomorrow? Weak systems hate that question because it exposes that the urgency was a method of control. And be ready to be punished at first. Maybe not overtly, but definitely subtly. You'll be labeled less committed. You'll be tested. And this is where men either fold or men become sovereign. Sometimes the hardest boundaries are not with colleagues. They are with family, because family often remembers the version of you that was useful to them. The peacemaker, the fixer, the one who absorbs tension so everyone else can stay comfortable and in control. So when you set a boundary, you don't just face a request. You face a history. You face the unspoken contract. You will stay in your role so we do not have to change. And the pushback can come wrapped as love and comfort. We're so worried about you. You're not yourself. You're being selfish. A lot of men fold here because the guilt is ancient and deep. So here is the line. Love does not require self-betrayal. Care does not require access. Concern does not override your limits. Holding that line may be one of the loneliest things you can ever do. But it's also where you stop being owned by your past. One more thing men get wrong here. They think a boundary means war. They think holding a limit means the relationship must break. And this isn't necessarily the case. A boundary is not a punishment. It's information. If the relationship is healthy, repair becomes possible. And repair is simple. You repeat the boundary without hostility. You stay consistent over time. You don't re-litigate. You don't carry resentment. You let the other person feel what they feel. And you do not try to manage it. And if they can adjust, trust grows. Not the old trust built on access and extraction. A new trust built on respect. And if they cannot adjust, the relationship reveals what it was actually built on. So either way, truth settles and arrives. When boundaries become normal, something settles in you. You stop scanning rooms for what is expected. You stop rehearsing explanations. You stop living as a resource. You become less reactive, less available to guilt, less available to manipulation. Not because you hardened, because you finally stopped leaking. And that creates a kind of quiet authority that people definitely recognize. Not the authority of control, the authority of self-possession. And so here is what comes next. When boundaries hold, your social world changes. Not overnight, but gradually. There are fewer chaotic bonds, fewer trauma connections, fewer relationships built on you being the stabilizer. At first, that feels like loneliness, not because you are abandoned, rather because you are no longer bonding through shared dysfunctions. That loneliness is the next gate, and that's where we go next as we dive deeper along this path of initiation.